Benissimo, perché dopo le discussioni che abbiamo avuto sul training abbiamo il professor Rafa Sadaba, il quale è membro delle ACTS e si occupa proprio di formazione e quindi ci parlerà Unified European Training for Resident. Quindi i nostri ragazzi che sono in Inghilterra e in giro per il mondo probabilmente avranno grande interesse a sentire questa comunicazione. Professor Sabada, thank you so much.
In Italy, I love Italy, I love the Italian people, so it's great to be here. I'm sorry, there's been some misunderstanding with my flights today, and there's been a bit of a delay. I'm sorry for the trouble that I might have caused. So I'm going to talk about the possibility of having a unified European training program. And I'm talking here representing the European Association for Cardiothoracic Surgery, and particularly the Quality Improvement Program in Education. So where do we stand at the moment? In the European Union, we have 28 national states. We've been able to identify 27 training programs. Many of them lack standards. They have not been done properly, we think. Some of them, not all of them, some of them appear to offer suboptimal training, but yet there is a cross-border recognition and free movement of workers across the European Union. So we identified that there was a problem, and a few years ago now, we conducted a survey. It was an internet-based SurveyMonkey questionnaire. We sent a blast mail to all resident members of the European Association of Cardiothoracic Surgery. We've got 116 replies, and of those, only 79 were from EU countries, but it was from a quite variety of countries, so we were able to come out with a conclusion of how training was conducted across the continent. And we wrote our findings in a paper which was published some 4 years ago now. Anyway, the conclusions that we got from that survey and that we wrote in that paper is that, for starters, there was an unequal program entry requirements according to different countries. The syllabus, that means what surgeons were meant to know or be able to do at the end of the training, was also different. How the progress of trainees or residents were assessed was also unequal. Length of training programs, in some countries it was as short as 5 years, in other countries it could go up for 12, 14 years. And then how specialists were certified in different countries was also unequal. So surgical training, cardiothoracic surgical training in Europe is unequal and in some parts suboptimal. But yet, as I said before, there is cross-border recognition of specialist degrees. And we felt that this is not right, it was not adequate. So with the European Association, we we had a group and who put together the principles of what it was felt that a pan-European training program should have. And we identified 5 principles on which standards should be set. One is selection. Now, in different countries, sometimes the residents might spend 5 or 6 years in a non-training position, and then if the head of department likes him or her, then he might get a training position. In other countries, acceptance to training program depends on the results of the multiple choice questions, which are sometimes irrelevant for cardiac surgery. In other countries, there are interviews, etc. But most of the, if not all, selection processes in Europe at present fail to assess things which must be or will be useful or might be necessary for a cardiothoracic surgeon to be able to work under stress, able to lead a team, able to solve complex situations, hand dexterity. Those things are not assessed when we are selecting the trainees to be. So we saw that there was a room for improvement in that aspect. Now, competency-based program, what does this mean? Now, up in most, if not, again, all countries, now is a time-honored, years spent in a unit. If the regulation says that you have to spend 5 years in training, you do your 5 years and you get your certification. And I think that is unrealistic. I might be a slow learner, and some other colleagues might be fast learners. So one might be able to finish the training before me, and I might take longer to train than others. So we proposed a tailored program which would be based on achievement of competencies. Competencies is defined as what somebody can do or knows or what attitudes they have. And these competencies are set at different levels. Normally it's 4, for instance, skill competencies is defined level 1, this person knows how to do. Level 2, can do with assistance. Level 3, does most of the procedure, but with assistance. Number 4, can do the procedure independently. So that is one of the proposals, the competency-based program. Not only you set the competencies, you not only set what a resident must know, must be able to do, and attitude must have, but you also set how to evaluate that. You should be able to evaluate that at every step. So once a trainee has achieved a level, goes on to another level and so on. And this comes again to the third principle, which is assessment. Assessment should be regular, done by appropriately trained assessors, sometimes with external assessment from somebody outside the training unit, and it should be assessment for learning to improve the process of the trainee. And another aspect of training that we thought was very important was simulation. From an ethical point of view, I might have doubts that somebody should be able to learn how to do an anastomosis on a patient. So there is a proposal to bring all those skill acquisitions outside of the operating theatre to the simulation room. And now, as you all know, there are a number of high and low fidelity simulators and virtual reality simulators which are very good or serve the purpose of learning many of these maneuvers. And manpower. Manpower is essential. There are many countries, or some countries in Europe, where there is unemployed cardiothoracic surgeons. And I think that is a tragedy for the trainees and for the government and for the country who's invested the money in training these people. So we identify a number of training programs because we said, well, we don't have to just develop one from the start. There are a number of training programs which have already what I have just described. One is the Intercollegiate Surgical Curriculum Program, which is the British one on the right upside. Then is the Dutch. The Dutch is a very interesting training program as well, which is based on the Canadian one, the CalMeds. And you can see that in the Canadian Meds there are a number of areas which have been identified which compose the medical expert. So medical expert, obviously, we have to have a cognitive knowledge, we have to know about the specialty, and we have to have the skills, but we also have to have attitudes. Attitudes as communicator, collaborator, manager. I have to be able to sustain, to manage a sustainable department, etc. So we went on to propose a program. Well, not quite a program, but we had to propose was standards. The European Association has not executive powers. We cannot make anybody to do anything. But we said, okay, we'll try to work towards agreeing on some standards, agreement on basic principles that all countries in Europe would agree, and propose a structure which would be a bit of like a building block structure. There are a number of institutions in Europe which would have responsibility for training, and as I said, EACS has not executive powers, but we were in a position to work as a catalyst, to facilitate communication between the different entities, between the national societies, the European Union of Medical Specialties, the European Board of Cardiothoracic Surgery, and the European Commission. We set up a number of meetings. The first one was 2010. You can see there Professor Alfieri and Pierre is there as well. And we had a number of, we have a number of representatives for a number of countries around Europe. And we agree on the basic principles on a training program, which more or less resemble what I just talked about, but some of them are different. There must be national authority. National authority, different countries might be, might be the Ministry of Health, might be the colleges, might be the medical boards, which should accredit the program and should accredit the institutions giving these programs, because they would assess them. The syllabus, as I said before, should be competency-based, in modules, because one of the problems we have in Europe is that in some places we have cardiovascular surgery, then in other places it's cardiothoracic surgery. In other countries, thoracic surgeons have a completely different training pathway. So it should be in modules for cardiac, vascular, and thoracic surgery, so which we could then apply them depending on what country the training is happening. How the program would be delivered, the length should be established, not fixed, but within limits. There should be a program training director in charge of ensuring that the training which is delivered in that unit is adequate. Trainees should be also have some type of professional development. They should be not just trained as on the skills, but in other areas that I have spoken about. There were agreement on how to select trainees, on manpower planning. It was agreed that trainees should comply with the European Working Time Directive, that they should have a portfolio, a personal portfolio of what their achievements and progression has been, and that they should be able to train to see different environments, so they should not spend just the 5, 6, 7, 8 years working in one unit. And eventually there was also agreement on how to assess progress. It should be regular. We should have some kind of internal regular assessment, but also external assessment, and equally, once we get our certification of a specialty, that should be assessed with an exam. So it is very complex. We all know how complex it is to make progress within the European bureaucracy. There are loads of difficulties, bumps, diversion, etc. But I think that we all have one interest, and everybody. Most people we have met over the last few years have a real interest in make sure that this happens. So hopefully one day we'll have a common standards. Thank you very much. That's all what I wanted to say.
Ci sono domande? Sì. Domande? No.
A question. Rafa, what about emerging countries? I mean, what about training program in Eastern Europe?
Well, I think that if we can get together, agree on some basic standards that anybody could, in one way or another, achieve. It's not that difficult if there is a will to do them. What we say could be used by anybody, by any country. It's not a matter of money. So I think it would be applicable. The principles are so basic and so that I don't think it would be a big problem. The good thing is that if any country, those countries which comply with these standards would have no problem to admit surgeons from other countries which have similar standards. So. At the end of the day, you want to be able to work freely across the continent, knowing that the people who come from elsewhere have the same standards that you would expect.
Any questions?
Just ask you one question. I work in England, and the English feel that it's not European Working Directive. They feel that they are the only country actually complying with the directives, because they send their trainees home after the on-call and so on. In your experience, are other countries really complying with this? Is your unit sending...
No, the British are the only ones who complained about it, but the only ones who are obeying to it.
So how can other countries not comply with it? I mean, is the hospital insuring the patients, the trainees who are staying? Or?
I don't think that it's even an issue. I mean, people do not complain. And in some instances that I know of, they don't complain because if they cut my working hours to comply with the European Working Time Directive, they are going to cut my salary as well. And, very few people want that to happen. So there is not a real will for that to happen.
So you're saying most of the units are illegal, working on...
They would be illegal, yeah. I think so.
Thank you so much, Rafa. We really appreciated your huge effort to be with us today, even if you had a lot of trouble traveling tonight. We just need to move on to the next session.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call the moderator of the next session, which is going to start in a few minutes. Thank you.